What happens when Hollywood's most beloved actress goes head-to-head with one of late-night television's biggest personalities? You won't believe what unfolds when Jennifer Lawrence sits down with Jimmy Kimmel for what was supposed to be a light-hearted, promotional interview, only to witness one of the most shocking confrontations in talk show history. The tension that erupted last night has sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry, leaving viewers stunned and social media ablaze with controversy. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when these two powerhouses clash in ways nobody saw coming. The studio lights dimmed as the familiar opening notes of Jimmy Kimmel Live echoed through the packed theater. The audience erupted in their usual enthusiastic applause as Jimmy Kimmel bounded onto the stage with his characteristic grin, but there was something different in his demeanor tonight, a subtle edge that would soon explode into full view. As he delivered his opening monologue, his jokes seemed sharper, more cutting than usual, and seasoned Kimmel watchers could sense an underlying tension simmering beneath his polished exterior. "Our next guest," Kimmel announced with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, "is an Academy Award-winning actress who's been making headlines recently for more than just her movies. Please welcome the always outspoken Jennifer Lawrence." The band struck up an upbeat tune as Jennifer emerged from backstage, her signature confidence radiating as she waved to the cheering crowd. She looked stunning in a sleek black dress, but those who knew her well could detect a subtle stiffness in her usually relaxed posture. As Jennifer settled into the guest chair, the standard pleasantries began, but even the most casual observer could feel the undercurrent of tension crackling between host and guest. "So Jennifer," Kimmel began, his tone deceptively casual, "you've been quite vocal lately about certain issues in Hollywood. Some might say you've been stepping outside your lane as an actress." The comment landed like a small bomb in the studio, and Jennifer's smile faltered just slightly before she composed herself. "I think actors have every right to speak about issues they care about, Jimmy," Jennifer replied, her voice measured but with a slight edge creeping in. "Especially when those issues affect the industry we work in and the people we work with." The audience sensed the shift immediately. This wasn't going to be the typical light-hearted celebrity chat they'd expected. Kimmel leaned back in his chair, his smile becoming more predatory than friendly. "Right, but don't you think there's a difference between having opinions and potentially damaging relationships with people who've helped build your career?" Kimmel's question hung in the air like a challenge, and Jennifer's eyes narrowed slightly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as both celebrities stared at each other across the desk, neither willing to back down from what was clearly becoming more than just casual conversation. The audience sat in uncomfortable silence, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Jennifer's hands gripped the arms of her chair slightly tighter, and Kimmel's famous grin began to look increasingly forced. What had started as a routine interview was rapidly transforming into something much more volatile, and neither party seemed interested in stepping back from the precipice they were approaching. The stage was set for a confrontation that would soon spiral completely out of control, leaving both careers hanging in the balance and the entertainment world reeling from the fallout. But this was only the beginning of what would become the most talked-about late-night television moment in recent memory, as the real fireworks were just about to begin. The commercial break couldn't have come at a worse time, giving both Jennifer and Jimmy a few minutes to stew in their mutual irritation. When the cameras rolled again, the atmosphere had shifted from tense to downright hostile. Jimmy's production team could be seen exchanging worried glances in the wings, clearly sensing that their usually controlled host was about to go off script in the worst possible way. "We're back with Jennifer Lawrence," Jimmy announced, his voice carrying a false cheerfulness that fooled absolutely no one in the studio. "Before the break, we were discussing your recent comments about industry accountability. I have to ask, Jennifer, when you talk about holding people responsible for their actions, are you including yourself in that conversation?" The question was loaded with implications, and Jennifer's face immediately hardened. "What exactly Are you implying, Jimmy? Jennifer's voice was ice-cold now, all pretense of celebrity politeness evaporating. The audience held its collective breath as they realized they were witnessing something genuinely uncomfortable unfolding in real time. Jimmy leaned forward, his smile becoming increasingly sinister. Well, there are some who might say that someone who's built their career on being relatable while living in a $40 million mansion might have their own accountability issues, Jimmy shot back, his tone dripping with condescension. The studio audience gasped audibly. This had crossed every line of professional conduct imaginable. Jennifer's face flushed with anger, but she maintained her composure with visible effort. Are you seriously going to sit there and attack my character on national television because I spoke out about harassment and inequality in Hollywood? Jennifer's voice was rising now, her famous temper beginning to show. This is exactly the kind of behavior that needs to be called out. You're trying to intimidate me into silence by making personal attacks. Jimmy's mask was slipping completely now, revealing something ugly underneath. Oh, please, Jennifer. You've made a career out of playing the victim while cashing checks that most people will never see in their lifetime. Maybe it's time someone called you out on your hypocrisy. The words hung in the air like poison, and the audience sat in stunned silence at the unprecedented breach of talk show etiquette. Jennifer stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor with a harsh sound that echoed through the suddenly silent studio. I cannot believe you would stoop this low, Jimmy. This isn't journalism or entertainment. This is just cruel. Her voice was shaking with barely controlled rage, and even Jimmy seemed momentarily taken aback by the intensity of her reaction. Sit down, Jennifer. We're not done here, Jimmy commanded, his voice taking on an authoritative tone that revealed just how much he was enjoying wielding his power as host. But Jennifer wasn't backing down. If anything, his attempt to control her only fueled her anger further. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every second of what was rapidly becoming a complete meltdown of professional decorum. The tension in the studio was so thick it was almost suffocating, and audience members were shifting uncomfortably in their seats, unsure whether they should be watching or looking away. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was a public execution, being broadcast live to millions of viewers, and Jimmy Kimmel was the executioner. But Jennifer Lawrence wasn't going down without a fight, and what happened next would shock everyone watching and forever change how people viewed both celebrities involved in this devastating confrontation. You know what, Jimmy? Jennifer's voice cut through the silence like a blade, her famous authenticity now weaponized with surgical precision. You want to talk about hypocrisy? Let's talk about a man who built his career on supposedly being the nice guy of late night while behind the scenes treating his guests like garbage for his own entertainment. The audience collectively sucked in their breath. Jennifer had just declared war on live television. Jimmy's face went pale, then flushed red as he realized he had pushed too far and awakened something dangerous. Jennifer, I think you need to calm down, he began, but she cut him off with a gesture that silenced him completely. No, I will not calm down. You ambushed me tonight with personal attacks because you knew I couldn't fight back without looking like the difficult actress, didn't you? This whole thing was planned from the moment I walked out here. Jennifer's voice was steady now, but everyone could hear the fury underneath. You brought me on this show not to promote my work, but to humiliate me because I dared to speak up about problems in our industry. The studio had gone dead silent except for the hum of cameras still rolling. Jimmy tried to regain control, his host persona cracking under pressure. Look, I think there's been a misunderstanding here. Maybe we should take another break. But Jennifer wasn't having it. A misunderstanding? You called me a hypocrite, attacked my character, and tried to shame me for having success while advocating for others. That's not a misunderstanding. Jimmy, that's calculated cruelty. She turned to address the audience directly, her voice carrying to every corner of the studio. This is exactly what I was talking about when I spoke about accountability. Powerful men who think they can Tear down anyone who threatens their comfort. Jimmy's desperation was becoming visible as he realized the interview had spiraled completely beyond his control. "Jennifer, please, let's just," he stammered, but she whirled back to face him with fire in her eyes. "Please what? Please let you finish destroying my reputation on national television? Please sit down and take it like a good little actress?" Her voice was rising again, and the raw emotion was electrifying the entire studio. "You know what the really sick part is? You probably thought this would be funny. Another celebrity breakdown for people to laugh at." The cameras continued capturing every second, as Jennifer's words hit their target with devastating accuracy. Jimmy's usual quick wit had completely deserted him, leaving him exposed and floundering in front of millions of viewers. His production team was frantically signaling from the wings, but there was no clean way out of this disaster. "This is what abuse of power looks like," Jennifer continued, her voice now carrying the weight of every person who had ever been bullied by someone. With more influence, a host using his platform to attack a guest who can't fight back without facing consequences. "Well, guess what, Jimmy? I'm fighting back anyway." The audience was completely captivated by the raw display of courage unfolding before them. Some were recording on their phones, knowing they were witnessing television history. Jimmy made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation, but his words came out weak and pathetic compared to Jennifer's passionate defense of herself. What happened in the next few moments would become the most replayed clip in late-night television history, as Jennifer Lawrence prepared to deliver a final blow that would leave Jimmy Kimmel's reputation in ruins and set social media ablaze with controversy that would rage for weeks. "You want to know what's really pathetic, Jimmy?" Jennifer's voice dropped to a deadly whisper that somehow carried more power than her previous shouting. "I came here tonight excited to talk about my new film, to connect with your audience, to have fun. Instead, you turned this into some twisted power play because you couldn't handle that I spoke truth about our industry." The silence in the studio was deafening as every person hung on her words. Jimmy made one final desperate attempt to regain control of his own show. "Jennifer, I think you're overreacting. This is just how interviews work sometimes." But his words sounded hollow and pathetic even to his own ears, and Jennifer's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Overreacting? This is exactly what every woman in Hollywood faces when they dare to speak up. You minimize our concerns, attack our character, and then tell us we're overreacting when we defend ourselves." She turned back to the audience, her voice carrying conviction that made Jimmy's weak protests seem even more pathetic. "Everyone watching at home should know that this is what friendly Jimmy Kimmel is really like when the cameras are rolling and he thinks he can get away with it." The production team was in full panic mode now, with producers frantically gesturing from the wings. But there was no stopping this runaway train. Jennifer had seized complete control of the narrative, and Jimmy was powerless to stop her. His face had gone from red to ashen as he realized the full scope of the disaster unfolding around him. "You know what the worst part is?" Jennifer continued, her voice building to a crescendo that would echo through entertainment history. "You probably thought this would be entertaining, that tearing down a successful woman would make for good television. Well, congratulations, Jimmy. You've certainly made television history tonight." The audience was completely mesmerized by the raw display of courage and righteous anger unfolding before them. Some were openly recording on their phones, knowing they were witnessing something that would be talked about for years to come. Jimmy sat frozen in his chair, his usual quick wit completely abandoning him when he needed it most. "This is abuse of power in its purest form," Jennifer declared, her words ringing with moral authority that made Jimmy look smaller with each passing second. "A host using his platform to bully a guest who's supposed to be under his protection. Well, I'm not staying here to be your punching bag for one more second." Jimmy finally found his voice, but it came out as a desperate whine. "Jennifer, please, let's just finish the interview. We can move on to talking about your movie." But she cut him off with a look that could have frozen fire. Move on? After what you just did to me? After you attacked my character, my integrity, my right to speak about issues I care about? There is no moving on from this, Jimmy. This is who you really are when you think you can get away with it." Her words hit him like physical blows, and everyone watching could see him crumbling under the weight of his own actions. The studio audience was completely captivated, torn between horror at what they were witnessing and admiration for Jennifer's courage in standing up to such blatant abuse of power. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every second of Jimmy's professional destruction at the hands of a woman who refused to be silenced. "You've shown everyone exactly what kind of person you are tonight," Jennifer said, her voice now carrying the finality of a judge delivering a verdict. "And I'm going to make sure everyone remembers this moment." With those words, she began to move toward the edge of the stage, and everyone in the studio realized they were about to witness something unprecedented in television history. But Jennifer wasn't finished yet. She stopped at the edge of the stage and turned back to face Jimmy one final time, her voice carrying across the deadly silent studio with crystal clarity. "To everyone watching at home, this is what it looks like when someone with power tries to silence someone speaking truth. Remember this moment the next time you wonder why people are afraid to come forward about abuse and harassment in Hollywood." Jimmy made one last pathetic attempt to salvage his reputation. "Jennifer, I was just doing my job as a host, asking tough questions." But his words died in his throat as Jennifer's laugh cut through the air like broken glass. "Tough questions? You attacked my character, my integrity, and my right to advocate for change. That's not journalism, Jimmy. That's bullying with a television budget." She gestured to the audience, her voice rising with passion. "Everyone here tonight witnessed what nice guy Jimmy Kimmel is really like when he thinks he can destroy someone without consequences." The studio audience began to shift, and something extraordinary happened. Scattered applause began to ring out. First one person, then another, then entire sections of the audience began clapping for Jennifer's courage in standing up to such blatant abuse of power. The sound grew louder and more sustained, creating a thunderous ovation that filled the studio and drowned out any attempt Jimmy might have made to speak. Jimmy's face went through a spectrum of emotions: shock, anger, desperation, and finally, defeat. He sat frozen in his chair as the woman he had tried to humiliate received a standing ovation from his own audience. The cameras captured every second of his humiliation, the same cameras he had planned to use to destroy Jennifer's reputation. "This is for every person who's ever been bullied by someone with more power," Jennifer called out over the applause, her voice strong and clear. "For everyone who's been told to sit down and shut up when they tried to speak truth. We don't have to take it anymore." With those words, she strode off the stage with her head held high, leaving Jimmy sitting alone at his desk in front of a cheering audience. The moment Jennifer disappeared backstage, the spell was broken. The audience's applause died away, replaced by an uncomfortable murmur as people began to process what they had just witnessed. Jimmy sat in stunned silence, clearly at a loss for how to continue his show after such a complete professional disaster. "We'll be right back," he finally managed to croak out, his voice barely audible. The cameras cut away, but the damage was already done. Within minutes, clips of the confrontation were spreading across social media like wildfire. Jennifer Lawrence and the Jimmy Kimmel began trending worldwide as viewers shared their shock and outrage at what they had witnessed. The fallout was immediate and devastating for Jimmy Kimmel. Major celebrities began canceling their appearances on his show, sponsors started pulling their advertisements, and television critics condemned his behavior in scathing reviews. His ratings plummeted as viewers expressed their disgust with his treatment of Jennifer Lawrence, and calls for his removal from the show grew louder each day. Meanwhile, Jennifer Lawrence became a symbol of courage and integrity in Hollywood. Her willingness to stand up to bullying behavior on live television inspired countless others to share their own stories of abuse and harassment in the entertainment industry. The confrontation that was meant to destroy her career instead elevated her to new heights of respect and admiration. The incident became a watershed moment in television history, demonstrating the power of speaking truth to authority and the importance of treating all people with dignity and respect. It proved that even the most powerful figures in entertainment are not above accountability, and that courage in the face of bullying can inspire others to find their own voices. Jimmy Kimmel's reputation never recovered from that night, while Jennifer Lawrence's star shone brighter than ever, proving that integrity and courage will always triumph over cruelty and abuse of power.